On April 15, 1945, southwest of Bergen, Nazi Germany, the British 11th Armored Division liberated Bergen-Belsen, one of the most notorious concentration camps, a site that would forever symbolize the brutality and horror of the Nazi regime. What they discovered was almost beyond comprehension. 13,000 unburied corpses and nearly 60,000 prisoners, many on the brink of death from starvation and disease. In the weeks and months that followed, thousands more perished from typhus, tuberculosis, and other illnesses. The British forces captured both male and female camp personnel and forced them to help bury the dead in mass graves. Among those guards was a woman who would become one of the most infamous figures of the Nazi regime, Irma Grese. Irma Grese was born on October 7, 1923, in Rechen, then part of the Weimar Republic. She was the third of 5 children, born to parents who worked as dairy laborers. When Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party came to power in January 1933, Germany was transformed by relentless propaganda. Through rallies, films, and the latest technology, the Nazis spread their ideology, while youth organizations such as the Hitler Youth and the League of German Girls prepared children for loyalty to the Reich and future service in war. Irma's father, however, despised the Nazis and refused to let his children join these groups, even though they wanted to. Still, indoctrination was unavoidable. Schools played a crucial role in spreading Nazi ideology. From their earliest years, children like Irma were taught to revere Hitler. His portrait hung in every classroom, while censored textbooks replaced traditional learning with lessons in obedience, militarism, racism, and anti-Semitism. In 1936, when Irma was just 13, tragedy struck. Her mother took her own life after discovering her husband's affair with a local innkeeper's daughter. From then on, Irma and her siblings were raised solely by their father, Alfred Grese, a devout Christian known for his harsh discipline, which often included physical violence. Academically, Irma struggled. According to her sister Helene, she was badly bullied at school and eventually dropped out at the age of 14. For the next year, she worked short-term jobs, first on a farm and later in a retail shop. In 1939, at just 15 years old, Grese began working as a nurse's assistant at the Hohenlichen Sanatorium, under the supervision of Karl Gebhardt, a prominent Nazi doctor who would later conduct gruesome medical experiments on prisoners at Ravensbr&uuml. Though she dreamed of becoming a fully trained nurse, her poor academic performance prevented it. By 1941, she was reassigned to a dairy farm in Fürstenberg, operating a butter machine. Her path into the machinery of Nazi terror began in July 1942, when she was sent to Ravensbrück, the largest women's concentration camp. Established in 1939, Ravensbrück held more than 132,000 women from across Europe, Poles, Russians, Jews, Roma, and others. Over 92,000 would perish there. The camp was guarded by SS men, but also by about 150 women who served as overseers. Many of them, like Grese, were either volunteers or women attracted by the pay and privileges the job offered. Ravensbrück also served as a training ground for female SS guards, overseen by Dorothea Benz, a notorious officer known for her cruelty. Under her instruction, recruits were taught how to control and break prisoners, driving them to work until they collapsed. Ravensbrück became, in effect, a school of violence for some 3,500 female guards, many of whom went on to staff other camps. Beginning in 1942, SS doctors at Ravensbrück also subjected prisoners to brutal medical experiments. These experiments were overseen by Karl Gebhardt, with assistance from doctors Herta Oberhuser and Fritz Fischer. They frequently used hammers to shatter the legs of female prisoners, then deliberately infected the open wounds with aggressive bacteria. The goal was to observe how the injuries healed, with or without chemical treatments such as sulfanilamide, one of the earliest antibiotics. Believing these methods could benefit wounded soldiers, they also experimented with bone transplants and fracture settings. Many of these procedures involved amputations and were often carried out without anesthesia. Nearly 80 women, mostly Polish, were selected for these experiments. Countless victims died, while survivors were left with lifelong disabilities. SS doctors also conducted sterilization experiments on women and children, many of them Roma, in pursuit of a reliable method of mass sterilization. Forced abortions were another horrific practice, often performed on women already 7 or 8 months pregnant. Others were beaten until they miscarried, while newborns were killed immediately after birth. Irma Grese, who had known Karl Gebhardt from the Hohenlichen Sanatorium, was only 18 when she reportedly served as an assistant nurse during such experiments at Ravensbr&uuml. Witnessing these atrocities is believed to have further warped her character, fueling her transformation into a sadist. When she later confessed to her family that she oversaw prisoners at the camp, her father beat her with a belt and banned her from returning home. By March 1943, Grese was transferred to Auschwitz-Birkenau in occupied Poland. Birkenau, the largest camp in the Auschwitz complex, was divided into 10 electrified sections and heavily guarded by the SS. Originally planned in 1941 to hold Soviet POWs, it quickly became both a labor and extermination camp. From 1944 onward, it also served as a transit hub for forced labor in the German war industry. According to her sister Helene, Irma was once a timid child who avoided confrontation. But at Auschwitz, she discovered power in cruelty. For the first time, she could strike others without fear of reprisal, and she took pleasure in it. Her brutality earned her the infamous nicknames, the Hyena of Auschwitz and the Beautiful Beast. Rumors of sexual deviance also surrounded her. She was said to have affairs with both male and female inmates, as well as with figures such as Joseph Mengele and Joseph Kramer, the camp commandant. Dr. Gisela Perl, an Auschwitz survivor, recalled Grese as one of the most strikingly beautiful women she had ever seen, yet also the most depraved and sadistic pervert she encountered. Survivor Olga Leniel similarly wrote that Grese had numerous liaisons with Nazi officers and took vindictive pleasure in sending attractive female inmates to the gas chambers. At times, Grese showed favoritism. She spared 16-year-old Nina Kaelska, whom she claimed resembled her sister, and used her as a messenger during secret lesbian orgies in the barracks. But Grese was quick to discard her lovers. Once she lost interest, she often had them selected for extermination. She also used violence against them. When one Georgian man resisted her advances, she humiliated and tortured his girlfriend in front of him, then had the man executed and the woman sent to the camp brothel. Even Mengele severed ties with her after learning she had sexual relations with Jewish prisoners, whom the Nazis deemed racially inferior. At Auschwitz, Grese fell in love with SS officer Franz Wolfgang Hatzinger, though her numerous affairs led to sexually transmitted diseases and multiple abortions. Dr. Perl, who performed one of them, recalled Grese's only concern was the pain she might endure. Within the camp, Grese held a series of roles. She began with telephone duties, later punished with command over work details carrying stones and building roads after neglecting to wear her SS cap. By May 1944, she was directly involved in the extermination of Hungarian Jews, cementing her reputation as one of the most feared female guards of the Holocaust. Between May 15th and July 9th, 1944, just 8 weeks, Hungarian gendarmerie officials, under the supervision of German SS officers, deported around 424,000 Jews from Hungary to Auschwitz-Birkenau. Upon arrival, after a brief selection process, the vast majority were immediately murdered in the gas chambers. That same month, at just 20 years old, Irma Grese was promoted to senior guard of Birkenau's Camp C, overseeing 6 or 7 female guards who rotated weekly. Camp C consisted of 28 accommodation blocks along with food storage, clothing depots, latrines, and wash houses. Though each block was designed to hold 100 to 300 people, Grese Camp crammed 1,000 prisoners into a single block. In many barracks, there weren't even beds, only bare floors where people lay crowded together. In total, roughly 30,000 prisoners, mostly Hungarians, were confined in Camp C. The Blockeltessen, or barracks leaders, were Czech inmates responsible for enforcing rules and order within the barracks. Conditions were appalling, with latrines failing under the strain. Grese later remarked that prisoners seemed to think any place was good enough for a latrine. Irma Grese quickly became infamous. She always carried her braided leather whip, coated in cellophane so blood could be easily washed off. Stationed at the gates, she delighted in beating prisoners as they marched in and out to work. She later boasted, "It was a very light whip, but if I hit someone with it, it hurt." Her cruelty escalated to such a degree that even Joseph Kramer, the camp commandant, told her to stop using it, orders she ignored. She beat prisoners for the smallest of offenses, stealing food out of starvation or arriving late to roll call. Roll calls often dragged on from 3 a.m. to 9 a.m., during which inmates were forced to stand perfectly still. Any movement resulted in severe beatings or hours spent kneeling. Sometimes she forced prisoners to hold heavy stones above their heads for hours, striking them if they faltered. When blankets were cut up by prisoners to make shoes or jackets, Grese ordered everything returned. When nothing was handed back, she unleashed searches, whipping anyone caught with makeshift items. Aside from her whip, she used a walking stick and her heavy boots, kicking women until they bled and collapsed. One woman, caught speaking to her daughter through a fence, was beaten so savagely by Grese that she lay motionless on the ground. Grese also played an active role in selections for the gas chambers. Alongside her lover, Dr. Joseph Mengele, she inspected female inmates to determine who was fit for labor and who would die. Naked women were paraded before them like livestock, and those who resisted or tried to reunite with relatives were viciously beaten into unconsciousness. On one occasion, 2 young women leapt from a window in a desperate escape attempt. Grese coolly drew her pistol and shot them where they lay. Yet, paradoxically, she sometimes spared lives. A notable case was that of Alice Tenenbaum, a 14-year-old prisoner. Though Mengele sent her to the gas chamber 16 times, Grese intervened each time, pulling her out at the last moment. Only after the war did Alice learn the reason. She reminded Irma of her younger sister, Helene. At Auschwitz, Irma Grese kept 2 large dogs, which she deliberately starved. Survivors remembered her riding through the camp on a bicycle, the dogs running at her side, as she accompanied female prisoners on their exhausting 16-kilometer march to work. Anyone who fell behind was set upon by the animals at her command. On one occasion, when a group of women transporting stones lost control of their wagon and it overturned, spilling its load, Grese unleashed the dogs. A survivor later testified, Irma set the police dogs on them. The girls tried to escape, but the trained beasts quickly caught them. The animals tore into their bodies, while Irma stood nearby watching, her eyes bloodshot. The sight of blood seemed to excite her. All the while, she smiled. During work details, Grese was known to beat women and kick them with her heavy boots. One of her cruelties was forcing women beyond the camp's perimeter fence to make it appear they were attempting escape. When a guard refused to shoot such prisoners, knowing they had been deliberately sent out, Grese testified against him in an inquiry. Thanks to the plunder of murdered victims, she dressed in luxury. She selected the finest clothing looted from across Europe, having camp prisoners, talented Jewish dressmakers, tailor her outfits. Her favorite was a sky blue jacket paired with a dark blue tie. Grese spent hours before her mirror styling her hair, imagining herself a glamorous movie star. She once boasted, "After the war, I will be in films. You will see my name as a star. I know life. I have seen much. My experiences will serve me as an artist." She was wrong. When Soviet forces neared Auschwitz in January 1945, Grese left with the SS as they began evacuating the camp and its subcamps. The prisoners were driven on brutal death marches, endless treks through freezing conditions, with little to no food. Those who collapsed were shot. Grese accompanied one such transport to Ravensbr&uuml, and from there to Bergen-Belsen in March 1945. At Bergen-Belsen, prisoners received only watery turnip soup and a tiny piece of bread each day. There was no water for washing, scarcely enough for drinking, and the camp was so overcrowded that inmates had to sleep sitting upright, huddled together under only a few hundred blankets. Disease, starvation, and thirst killed hundreds daily, between 250 and 300 on average. Even in these final weeks, Grese continued her brutality. She beat and kicked prisoners, forced them to kneel holding stones overhead, and made them stand for hours in freezing rain or snow. She also tormented women with endless exercises, marching, running, or frog jumps, until they collapsed. Only days before liberation, she was seen beating a girl with a riding crop and smashing the heads of 2 sisters together for stealing potato peelings. Her cruelty in just 3 weeks earned her the name, the Beast of Belsen. On April 17, 1945, 2 days after British troops liberated Bergen-Belsen, Irma Grese was captured along with other SS officers, including Joseph Kramer, commandant of Auschwitz and later of Belsen. Questioned by a journalist about her crimes, she answered coldly, "It was our duty to exterminate antisocial elements so that Germany's future would be assured." At the Belsen trial, which began in September 1945, survivors testified that she was the most vicious of the SS women. Grese dismissed their accounts as lies, claiming they were making an elephant out of a fly. She admitted only to beatings, never to killings. The tribunal was not swayed. On November 17, 1945, she was sentenced to death. On December 13, 1945, British executioner Albert Pierrepoint carried out the sentence. As she walked to the gallows, only 22 years old, her last word was a single command: "Schnell, quickly." Irma Grese became the youngest woman executed under British law in the 20th century. No one mourned her. Thanks for watching the History of Front channel. Be sure to like and subscribe and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.